Right. So every family has different dynamics, and those dynamics, like you said, Charlie, could run from personal issues to actually not understanding business and not understanding how business runs.
Welcome to the Power of Respect podcast with Charlie Leichtweis, author of The Power of Respect in Business. Charlie is one of America's foremost authorities on respect and leadership development in family business. And now, here's Charlie.
Hello, I'm Charlie Leichtweis. Welcome to another episode of the Power of Respect podcast. Today we are talking about respect and bringing people together. My guest today is Adriano Pedrelli. Adriano is a strategic business leader with experience in leading small and mid-market companies. He co-founded a financial services organization specializing in providing succession planning and other services related to closely held organizations. Adriano has served on the board of various Wintrust banks, as well as private and nonprofit boards. He recently led Waste-Dry and Impact Polymer as president and CEO. Welcome, Adriano. Great to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about your experience. You've had a lot of experience with some family-owned businesses, bringing people together. Let's talk about your experience with that and how respect played a role in that sort of thing, and then we'll get into some of the details of the challenges of that.
Well, I'd first like to start off and say, it's not one box fitting all, right? And so when it comes to that, it depends on where they are in the family, what I would say, pecking order, I guess, and how long the succession plan has been in place. So in some respects, there is a formation of an entity in order to create the succession plan. And when that happens, that's when there's a structure to create what would be the respect part of the organization, of who to deal with and how to deal with them.
Mm-hmm. And so as you've worked with these organizations and you've seen the evolution of the family and the business coming together, what are some of the significant challenges you see that those families have had, and how have you helped them with that?
Well, I would say the term that I use the most is unfulfilled expectation. So there are times when, and this goes not only for the patriarch, but for the successors, there are times when the patriarch has this expectation of a certain person in the family taking over. And that person is either not capable, or that person is unwilling to do so, or that person doesn't have the capacity to do so. And on the flip side, there are times when there's a chosen person to do it, and it's totally the wrong person to take over. And I specifically have dealt with a family specifically where they were grooming one of the children to take over, and that child, while he wanted to take over, did not have the skill set in any way, shape, or form to do that. And because the other child was younger, the other child was of a different sex, they didn't feel that other child would be able to take over. The reality was that other child was the one who had the capacity, who had the ability, and who, when didn't take over, went and started their own organization and became much more successful.
So do you think that in terms of the biases people have, in this case, it may have been a gender bias, that biases affect the cultural decisions these families make?
Well, I think I would tell you that early on when I was doing this, I think that was a greater issue. I think now it's less of an issue, but I also still believe that it is an issue. And that's something you have to pay attention to. Similar to the fact that in another situation that I worked on for many years, the succession plan was that the wife was supposed to take over for the husband, and the wife was extremely talented. The wife was extremely educated, and if it wasn't for the fact that we didn't create a plan and didn't create a process in order for her to be involved in the business, the employees of the business would not have accepted her. And so there are not only biases from the standpoint of within the family, but there's biases from the standpoint of the employees that you might be leading in the organization. So it's a very what's the word I want to use? It's a very complicated issue when it comes to succession planning, because it involves everybody that's involved, and that includes the people that you're leading.
No, that makes perfect sense. That's good advice. It would make a case, what you're talking about, make a case for generational engagement to start early on in the process of generations, both with each other within the family and then their exposure to the business, understanding what the business is, what their products are, what they do for the communities they're in, what they do for the associates, et cetera. Is that what you find as well? Works best?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because if there isn't immediate engagement, there's a level of immaturity that occurs when, let's say, children realize that their father or mother have grown a business to a large revenue source, and what happens is if they don't have that level of maturity to understand what that means and how important that is to the family, they take that as well. They should be deserving of it, and therefore they don't take care of it as well.
They can take it for granted or become complacent with it.
Thank you. You have the exact words that I wanted to use, Charlie.
That's fair. So what are some of the better things you've seen in the culture of families that have been successful versus not? Any thoughts there?
Well, the most successful things I've seen in terms of that is the indoctrination of the fact that the business is a very important part of the family, and that everybody is an integral part and plays an integral part in this business, whether they are actually involved directly in the business or whether they have a peripheral role. For instance, they could be part of one of the charitable organizations of the business that's important for the business. Mm-hmm. And I believe that a constant conversation with the family is important to help them maintain their understanding of the importance of their role in not only in the organization but also in the business.
Right. Well, so what are some of the things you've done to bring people together in these circumstances, or even non-family related circumstances in business?
Some of the things that we've done to bring people together is role playing, and what I mean by that is something that I alluded to previous to it. Is if there is a successor that is going to come into the business, that successor should start to take the chair of the person that they're replacing, and that's important because that also will create acceptance not only within the family but also within the employees that it might be leading. Okay. So that's one thing is the role playing.
Have you seen this work with respect to board of directors and bringing people on as associates or at least being able to witness or be mentored by a board member of the company?
Oh, absolutely. I think the shadowing of a board is really important. As we say many times, and as I've coached some people who have recently joined boards, I always say, the first couple board meetings, try not to say anything, and the rule is always nose in, fingers out, and that's what's important. That's what's important with the observation. And that's what's important with a family member observing the etiquette, the process, those types of things that are important in a successful board meeting and a successful conversation within board meetings.
Right. And it seems that kind of training and understanding would work well in other leadership roles in the business were they to be taking those roles going forward in the future.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about maybe some of the experiences you've had on boards you've been on where there's been, let's say, conflict and how it was resolved. I'm sure you've seen some examples of people disagreeing in those environments.
Yeah, there's been a few of those examples. Obviously, the best way to resolve a conflict is to lay down the facts of the issues, and to understand what the mission of the organization is. And so one of the things that, especially in one of the companies that I was a partner in, I had 5 partners and we had monthly board meetings. We would deviate from the mission because we all would have personal either issues that would affect our situations or decisions, or we would have outside influences. And so when those came into play, what you concentrate on is what the mission is and what the agreement is between this, in our case, between the 6 of us. And so that's one of the key areas is that. The other thing that you also have to understand in some of these conflicts, it's important to listen to the other person, because the conflict might be because of your lack of listening, or you're putting up a wall in terms of what you believe is right. And it's important to listen. And I do, since I'm a fiery Italian, I do know that sometimes I have to mull things over. And so sometimes I need 24 hours to do that. So I think it's also important that when people have thoughts, as we have done in some of the board meetings that I'm in, when people have thoughts, they jot those thoughts down and they send them to the other person, so that way that other person can mull them over. Because usually when that happens, what happens is reasoning takes place, and that's better than being in the fire of the moment.
Well, that's good advice. Absolutely. In terms of listening, I know that I've learned lessons on listening over time as well, and I think it's one of the biggest signs of respect when you listen, or listen longer, as I've learned over time, to another person. Being able to respect their point of view, to hear it out completely, because sometimes you may find when they finally get it all out, it's not exactly what you thought they were saying or where they were going.
Well, right. So you come in with these expectations. You come in with this what I call already always thinking. So you're already anticipating what he or she is going to say, and so automatically, once you anticipate that, you've already shut out what they're actually saying. And it's really important to turn that off. It really is important to say to yourself, this is something new that person's going to say. I've never heard it before. And that's the attitude that you have to take when you are listening to somebody.
Because to your point, when you shut it off, they can tell you're not listening.
Right. And then they get more frustrated.
Right.
So
and it goes up the emotional scale to the point of even potentially anger, and then of course communication falls apart.
And then all of a sudden they're saying to themselves, see, this is what he does all the time. He doesn't listen. This is what he shuts me off. And that's where it really starts. And
Right.
I think a lot of times, well, I know that in the board meetings I've been in, not only in those, but even in the bank board meetings, sometimes it's just a small fact that is misunderstood that all of a sudden creates a large problem. And so sometimes you have to dig down deep and understand those facts before you even say anything. And I think
Right.
that's also one of the things. I think sometimes there's misunderstandings at board meetings because people are not prepared. And that's the one challenge I've always found at board meetings, is that some people are simply not prepared. And when they're not prepared really to understand what the issues and the challenges are of that situation.
Right. And those words work well even outside the boardroom relative to managing a business.
Right. And they work very well with family offices.
Tell us about some of your experience with family offices, I'm sure, without mentioning any names.
Well, I mean, what would you like to know? I mean, they're all very different. I like to say that one shoe doesn't fit all. Unlike a car where you can drive it, it has four wheels and it has a steering wheel. You might be a bad driver, but you can know how to press the gas and press the brake, hopefully. But in a shoe, if you put on a size 5 shoe and you're a size 10 foot, it's just not going to work, regardless of how you try to make it work. And I think with family offices, I think that's one of the challenges. I think sometimes families want to create this family office and they want to create it in the same vein as another family. The reality is the dynamics are different. The challenges are different. And so it's more difficult. It's more difficult to do that. And I think it's a case by case basis on how you work with family offices, because I think it's not only about personalities, but it's also about history that might have happened within a family office. And one of the challenges I have found is really the challenge. The biggest challenge is really the challenge of putting the wrong person in the seat. And how do you change the mind of the patriarch from doing that? How do you convince that patriarch to not do that? And I had a situation where that did occur, and we did finally convince the patriarch not to put that person in the seat. There were a lot of hurt feelings. There was a lot of stomping on the feet, I would say. And that's where the challenge is. And what you have to do is convince them that they play a more important role in a different side of the family.
Right. And do you see the benefit then of sort of two elements to the organization? One is the operating company and its either leadership and or board, if there is a board, and then the family or family council side of it, to be able to have the two separately meet and understand each other and then try to bring it together, the concepts.
Well, I think the family council or the overreaching board, or however you want to term it, I think it's really, really important. I also think it's important because when you have something like a family council, what you can do is you can put together some outsiders in that family council to really help the let's call them the kids, really help the kids understand what the issues are from somebody that's independent from the family. And I think that's one of the things that with one of the small family offices that I worked with, what we did is we surrounded the son with outside members as his advisors, and there were members that he actually went out and sought and we interviewed, so he felt comfortable with those individuals. And in this small family office, I think that was very beneficial for him and for his success. So I think there's a big benefit in terms of having an overreaching council, as you might call it, to to help an organization.
Right. If one of our guests on this show also sort of described it as therapy, they said that they actually brought a therapist on board relative to one of the outsiders to help the family office or the family council understand how to deal with conflict.
Absolutely, and in some of those situations, that's very much needed, because there could be so many different dynamics within a family, and it could be related to second marriages. It could be related to any other psychological issue that somebody might have, personal psychological issues, and that's why I said in the beginning that one shoe doesn't fit all, because all the issues of families and family offices are affected by their own personal lives, and that can run the gamut of what that can mean.
Right. No, that makes sense. So in terms of bringing people together, as you say, not one shoe fits all, size fits all. You're talking about the ability to understand where and whom the additional folks necessary to help people understand their communication processes, their mindset, and therefore be best at bringing people together, which again could be someone in the area of therapy, could be someone in the area of business acumen, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So every family has different dynamics, and those dynamics, like you said, Charlie, could run from personal issues to actually not understanding business and not understanding how business runs. So you can have a very talented person, but they might have a certain ignorance in various areas of the family business, or a certain ignorance in the various personally. And so those are the things that you have to figure out what they are, and you have to dig deep to figure out what it exactly is that a family needs in order to have a good succession plan, and to get not only from the first generation to the second generation, but pass it from the second generation to the third generation. And that's one of the important things. And I think everyone should realize that typical family business doesn't pass from the first passes from the first to the second, but not from the second to the third. And that's also because of the dynamics of the family. And so those in a family office won't be successful if you don't solve those dynamics, and it won't be long term if you don't solve those dynamics up front.
And it definitely affects the ability to create a legacy.
Yes, it does.
What advice? I mean, you've talked about some of it in terms of but how would you sum up your advice relative to a family in terms of understanding how to bring people together, how to understand conflict, how to understand communication strategies, et cetera, that might help them?
Well, I would tell them to take in a very what would I call it, a conscious inventory of who they really are. First of all, that's the first thing. And second, I would tell them that they have to, once they understand who they are and what they want to accomplish, that they have to seek out the right person or people in order to help them accomplish that, because it will be very difficult for them to do it within their own family. There's too many biases, and quite frankly, it takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort, and it takes you away from the things that are important for the family and for the family business and for the family office. Mm-hmm. So it's important to find the right players in order to do that.
Oh, that makes perfect. That's good advice as well. Is there anything else you want to add at this point for our listeners relative to family businesses, or your experience in terms of helping bring people together?
Not that I can think of right now. I hope we've covered all the gambit of this.
Yeah, I think we have. Because what you talked about, the generational engagement aspects that affect succession planning, affect ultimately governance, which is decision making within businesses, et cetera. So I think that the advice you're giving is another example to people who are struggling to find out what is the right mix of people and time to do this.
Agreed.
I want to thank Adriano Pedrelli for being with us today, and I especially want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Power of Respect podcast. If you like what you heard today, please consider sharing the podcast and visit our website at expertsinhow.com. A quick reminder, if you'd like to read my book, The Power of Respect in Business, it's available on Amazon. I also want to let you know that a new book is coming out soon called The Power of Legacy and Family Business, so look for that on Amazon as well. Thanks again for listening, and remember, respect builds trust, trust builds relationships, and relationships are the key to leadership. Thank you.
This has been the Power of Respect podcast with Charlie Leichtweis, author of the book, The Power of Respect in Business. To listen to more episodes and to learn about Charlie's leadership development programs, visit his website, expertsinhow.com.